Welcome to another edition of Baseball and Beyond, presented by Massa's Restaurants, 5 locations in St. Louis. Unfortunately, not in Edwardsville, Illinois, where our next guest joins us from. One of my all-time favorites. I say that every time, and I mean it this time. It's Jason ISRINGHAUSEN. Hello, Izzy.
Hello, sir. How are you today?
Oh, this is great. Boy, I've been trying to track you down for so long. You live right across the river, and I finally catch you on this wonderful, beautiful winter day in St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, you have been tracking me down for a while. It's just it's hard to get schedules together and stuff. But today is a nice, easy day. No chasing kids all day, and here we are. So let's see what you got to say.
Well, let's start. I know we've talked. Me and you have talked about this a little bit, but once again, the Cardinal Hall of Fame ballot comes out, and I know just by knowing you it's kind of a big honor for you to be on that ballot. And the ballot, you've been on it a few times now, but when you're the all-time leader in saves for an organization, that seems like a pretty good reason to be in. So just give me your thoughts every time you see that ballot and know that you're on it, and then what an honor it would be to be in the Cardinal Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean it would be an honor. I mean, it's especially one thing for being I consider St. Louis my hometown. I grew up in Brighton, Illinois, so 40 minutes from the stadium or so, and it's just it was a dream come true getting to play for the Cardinals and having some success there. We won some ball games, we won some pennants, won a World Series, and to be part of all that and to be listed on that ballot, just to be in the same sentence as some of the guys that have the red coats and some of the guys that are on the ballot this year, it's pretty humbling, coming from a small town, being a small town kid, small high school and things, never really recruited, not a high draft pick. Had to work for it in the minor leagues, and I always tell myself and I tell my kids, nothing's going to be given to us. We got to earn it, and I'm proud to be on the ballot, but then again, it's very humbling in the same thing, something I never thought would happen.
It's a very good point you made, and you just sort of made me realize that although it's obvious that those teams were great, 02 you show up, 03 it didn't make the playoffs, but obviously 04 is great, 05 is great, 06 obviously we know that you guys won a World Series. And you're the closer the whole time. And when you look back at the last 5 years, the Cardinals, I think, have used 5 different closers to get to where they've wanted to go. And in the last 2 years, they haven't even been there. So I think that's a big deal. Just tell me a little bit about when you made that free agent signing, and then you get to come home and then have all that success and then be a big part of that. I always when I mention those teams, I always go Roland, Pujols, and Edmonds, Carp, Soup. Izzy. I mean, you're part of that giant, great run of games. And as we look back and as we get further away from it, we all know it's probably never, or it's a long time away, again, I would say, from seeing that kind of talent all on one team.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have the MV3, Pujols, Roland, and Edmonds all on the same team, and they have the kind of years that they did, it's hard to duplicate that. And but we also had wins, and we did outslug some people, but we did out-pitch some people. It was just between St. Louis and Texas, because both of my sisters lived down in Texas, so it would have been nice to go down there and play in front of family too. And I probably would have bought a house down there and just stayed down there because I love Texas. But I had left the house that morning, and I told Lori, my wife, I said, "Hey, we're signing with Texas." She goes, "Okay, perfect." And I leave the house and I go golfing with a friend of mine, and Mr. DeWitt calls me on the phone, and he said, "Hey, what's it going to cost? What's it going to take to get you to St. Louis?" And I just, blurted out something, and he goes, "Okay, done." And I was like, "Man, I should have asked for more." But at the time, I just blurted out something thinking that it would just go away. And he goes, "Okay, done." And I was like, "Oh boy!" And then I come home, and I'd already told my family and friends that I was signing with Texas. I was going to be a Ranger. And I came home and said, "Hey, change the plans. We're going to sign with St. Louis." And it was just everybody was very happy. And it was a dream come true to come home, to play for my home team. There was a lot of saying no at the beginning for tickets and stuff like that, and that was probably the hardest part. But, but then again, it's also hard, towards the end of my tenure here, things didn't go so good, and we were getting booed and things like that. But that's part of baseball, and it was hard on my family. I had a lot of friends taking up for me in the stands and things like that. But in the long run, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't have changed a thing. and just enjoyed my time here. And then, I'm still working for the Cardinals, so it's been a pretty good relationship.
Yeah, and I just don't know how it had to feel to be booed after all the things that you've done. And it's just sort of the thing about being a fan, I guess. I guess people just I think closers just get, I'm going to say, shit on. I think you guys get shit on way more than you should. You go out and save 40 of 40 games, and then the next 2 are bad, and then bam, here come the boos. You did have a rough 06, and you were pitching through so many injuries. But what does it mean when, that you had to walk off the mound and get booed in your hometown after all those good years? And you mentioned it wasn't fun. How did you get through all that?
Well, I don't think it's fun for anybody to get booed.
And by the way, I'm sorry for booing.
Yeah, I'm sure. But it's part of baseball. It's part of sports, and it's part of being a closer. You're either the hero or the GOAT. There's no in between. Bruce Sutter once told me, you're the only guy that comes to the ballpark knowing if you have a bad day, the team's going to have a bad day. And it kind of put things in perspective for me, and I kind of I put more pressure on myself than anybody did. There was nobody harder on me than myself. Well, maybe Dad. Dad would always give me a good rousing if I did bad, because he said he had to hear it at the cafe the next morning. It was just part of it. I don't regret it. I'm not angry at people. It's the nature of the beast. It's what have you done for me lately? And I think that's any kind of sports better. And as a fan, you pay your money to go there, and it's your right to boo or cheer or whatever you want. It hurt at times, like I said, but I also know that, if anybody could do it, everybody'd be doing it.
You mentioned that the Cardinals called in 02 and you were like, oh, I should have asked for more money. And I always love doing this. I hate, I get to look up people's salaries. What does it mean to have that much money, Izzy? You did make, you made a lot of money.
It's good for my kids, put it that way. I try not to spoil them too much, but they really don't do without. And and I've been able to help out my parents and my sisters and my sister-in-laws and my whole family. It's been a blessing. I've been able to help out a lot of organizations along the way, and I hope I'm not done doing that. I try to give to as much charity as I can. Have a Cardinals fantasy camp every year, and we're down there, and it's for Mercy. And I try to give some money to Mercy because of what they do for sick children. They don't ever away a sick child, but somebody's got to pay for it. It don't just come out of thin air. And I like being a part of things that raise money for people and animals and the humane society and things like that. I try to do my part, but then again, I don't try to blast it over the airwaves and tell everybody what I do. It's just I've been blessed to be able to make some decent money, and I try to give back any way I can.
How about the Brad Straubinger Fund? I don't think I've heard you talk about that, but do you have a wedding coming up? Is there, maybe a $10,000 check to cover the wedding?
Well, you have been in Florida for the last week and a half, so I think you're doing pretty well. You've been seeing all these posts on Instagram, so I think you're doing okay.
I think we both have decided at one point we may be neighbors down there because I need to get out of this. I can't handle this looking at the gray skies here. So I just want to kind of run through a few guys that obviously you got to play with. I love a good Steve Klein story. And you guys were definitely thick as thieves. He called you Dum Dum, or you called him Dum Dum. I can't remember. You were Dum. Who was Dum Dum? You, right?
I was Dum Dum.
Right. He was nuts, right? And just a nut. Have you ever met anybody like him? And you have a great one or two good Steve Klein stories. He's not invited back to fantasy camp anymore. That's a great story. I don't know if we can tell that, but he's just a crazy guy. He was crazy then, and he's still crazy now, right?
Yeah, when I first met him, I didn't think that it was possible for somebody to act that way. But and I'm not no choir boy myself. And then coming to meet Steve Klein, there's a gross way to act, and then there's a Steve Klein way to act, and it's raunchy, it's good comedy, it's all in good fun. He's got a heart as big as gold. But if you don't know him, you would think there was something seriously wrong with him. And everybody's got stories. We've seen the stories of him flipping off, Tony on camera and all these things, from the bullpen when he got the so-called dry hump, get him up and then don't put him in the game. And him wrestling with one of the owners in the clubhouse naked, wrestling with Mr. Pratt, and there's a lot of nakedness running around. It's a head first slides in the shower, banging his head against the wall and things like that. I could go on and on, but we're trying to keep it clean for the most part here. But it was a blast playing with him. And this man would take the ball no matter what was going on. The man pitched with gout. The guy pitched with a bad body, a bad elbow, and things, and just always got the job done. And it was a pleasure having him on my team. It was kind of like I can't really explain how to describe him as just he was a great, gross teammate. Put it that way.
David Pratt, was he up for this?
Oh, no. He didn't like it, but he knew to keep his distance from Kleiner because if Kleiner was naked in the clubhouse, he was going to get tackled. And it was fun to watch, but I don't think Mr. Pratt really enjoyed it. But he would laugh the whole time. So, I mean, that's a billionaire getting molested by a naked guy in the clubhouse. I mean, it was good, clean fun, but I don't think that would fly today.
I think it should fly today. I think that's what's missing from the game. I mean, I don't want to be around it, but it sounds fun as hell. I want to know where you were the night. So he does flip off Tony, and then later, I guess Tony confronts him in the shower. Were you around to see any of that? And can you give us a little play-by-play of that?
No, I was not around. I was in the I was in the bullpen at the time, and he did it. I mean, he threw his glove and gave him the double bird, and I was like, oh no, that's going to be on tape somewhere. I know somebody had to have gotten that somewhere, and it kind of went on the away side, and all of a sudden after the game, and then Tony came into the shower looking for him, and he wasn't in there, but he did find him finally and confronted him. I don't think it went real well for Steve, but I'm sure Steve was still pitching the next night. But yeah, Tony wasn't real happy with him. So
Tony could fight, right? Tell me about Tony. Obviously, Hall of Fame manager, but an odd guy, but just I still think he's a genius. I mean, he thinks of everything. As a player, I don't know how it was, if it was as fun, but it seemed like, hey, ninth inning, you're in, right? I mean, give me something on Tony that maybe we don't know.
No. I loved. It's probably the guy kind of revolutionized, so to speak, the closer role. I mean, and the way to run a bullpen. There was nothing was going to sneak by Tony. I mean, I think I'm not going to say his biggest, but probably one of his faults was that he thought too far ahead in the game, and sometimes the moment got away from him. We would why is our lefty not getting warmed up for this guy? But he was, thinking too far ahead. And Tony was a genius, like you say, but Tony is very competitive. Had a quick temper to him. We've all seen it. I've seen it. We've argued, and after the game, a bad game or something, and we would both go out and have our adult beverages in separate locations. We'd end up seeing each other in the hotel lobby and have a nice little argument. The next day, there'd be some chest poking and things like that. And the next day, he said, "We good?" And I'd say, "Yep." And then it was just like normal business. And I think he was loyal to me to a fault at times, throwing me out there when I was hurt. But there was no way I was ever going to say no if he wanted me out there. I mean, that was my job, and it was my, duty to go out there whenever I was called on.
Feels like, I'm not around that team as much as I was your teams, but I did see a lot of you guys kind of always having a good time in the clubhouse, always having a good time outside the clubhouse, and I think the dynamic of the players was part of that. Do you think that we've lost even that, even just 10 years down the line, where it's everybody's on their phone, they're playing? Right now these guys play video games in the locker room at 4 p.m., and they're all sitting at their stalls playing against each other. It's just a weird thing. I know we're both older, so it's not our generation, but it just seems weird. Do you think am I seeing that right?
Well, and you are, but it just changes with the times. We used to sit around and have beers and stuff after the game, and now there's no beer in the clubhouses because of accidents that people have had, after games and stuff like that, and the alcohol around the team and things have just kind of gone away. Budweiser doesn't own the team anymore, so it's not there every single day, and social media has a big part to do with a lot of this stuff. It's just, technology has changed the game in more ways than one, analytics to all the way down to how much the guys converse in the clubhouse. I mean, it's not sitting around having beers, ice in your arm, talking about the game anymore. I mean, I don't know, but from what I've heard, it's like 5 minutes after the game. I mean, everybody's gone. If you're not one of the first reporters to get in there to interview people, they're out of there. And I just don't understand that. But, that's the way it is today. And it's just something that I don't like it, but I'm not in that generation. I guess the millennials have their own way of doing things, so to speak.
Yeah, you were Generation K.
Oh yeah, K for kicked around. Maybe I don't know. We all three of us kind of blew out. I had a long career, but it was part of it. But like I said, I wouldn't change anything the way things happened. I would have loved to have stayed healthier, so I could have pitched more the way I wanted to pitch, but. You can't stop. You can't stop getting old, so that's just part of it.
I was just trying to make a little funny joke there.
I heard you.
Okay. I will. I do kind of want to ask you about that. But '06, I think a lot of people remember just the way it ended. But when did the injuries kind of start for you? Because and the other thing I was always curious about was that you still went out and wanted to take the ball. I think I remember a series in New York where it just seemed painful to watch. I mean, just watching you. Where did the injury start in '06, and how did you realize, all right, I can't pitch anymore? And talk about just not wanting to give up the ball either, just because maybe, who else? I mean, finally Wainwright comes up and puts his hand up and says, I'll do it, but just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was, I started off that year really strong, and then I think gradually it was my hip. I had just a bad hip. I've had a couple surgeries on the hip now. I haven't had it replaced yet. Just had my knee replaced, and now the hip's probably next to be replaced. But it was just one of those ongoing. I could not. I mean, as if you're talking about mechanics, I couldn't get over my front leg. So as soon as my leg would land, like the hip would give out, so my whole body would kind of drop. And if you know mechanics, you have to get over your front leg to be able to finish pitches down the way, this, that, blah, blah, blah. That's boring stuff. But, it would be that typical, I don't know about typical, but, fifth inning, if the game was close, I would have to get some medicine and get ready to pitch. And, it was just an ongoing process, and it just started to get worse and worse and worse, and the medicine wasn't helping. And September 9th, I believe it was, in Washington at the old stadium, RFK Stadium. And I blew a game. Jose Vidro hit a ball down the line off of me. I can remember everything. Came in that night, told Tony, I said, hey, I appreciate everything that you've done for me and how loyal you are to me, but I'm not helping the team anymore. So I'm taking myself out. And I'll probably, I had surgery a couple days later. And then they bounced around through closers. And I think we had a 9-game or 8-game lead at that time, and I think we ended up winning by maybe 1 game. And, Waino was I think he was the last guy on the twister wheel that name landed on. And, he had his moments too where I think he blew a couple games, but then again, he probably had the best stuff of the bunch. And, I think at that point he was one of those guys that was fresh behind the ears, too dumb to really know what was going on. And, the rest is history. The big curveball strikeout Beltran, and then, got the final out of the '06 World Series. I mean, it's just one of those things where if he wasn't such a good kid, I'd hate him for life because that was supposed to be my moment to shine. But, it's just I could have done what other guys have done, packed up my stuff and went home and not been around the team, but I stayed with the team and worked with the young kids, and we got through the World Series and the playoffs with Kenny and Flo and Tyler Johnson and Waino. And I think I was more nervous watching them than ever playing because I felt like, that was probably the first time I realized, I'm like, damn, I kind of like this coaching thing. I might want to get into this later. And, I've been doing that now for 4 or 5 years with the Cardinals. So it's worked out, and I'm enjoying my job now being the minor league pitching instructor and stuff like that. But, '06 was rough. I've still never put my ring on my finger because I didn't pitch in the World Series, but it's in a safe, nice and cozy with some other rings that I acquired throughout the years. And other than that, the rest is history. I'm the one that gave Waino the shot. Now look at him.
I think, I'm not, obviously, I didn't play on that team, but I'm a huge fan of the team. And I always feel like the '06 World Series win, you guys still had all the pieces basically from '04 and '05, and it was kind of the culmination of that 3-year run. And so and obviously I can't speak for you, but I would look at it as, man, I helped out in '04. I got us to a World Series in '04. I did everything I could do in '05, and I did everything I could do in '06. And it's more of a 3-year run. And maybe, if you go back and make those rings again, you could, go '04 to '06, because it really was. It's the same guys. It's Pujols and Edmonds and Rowland, and you had Eckstein in '05. But it really was Carpenter and Soup and Marquis. Just all those guys came around in '04, and it felt like a 3-year run. So I'm going to say you can wear the ring. That's what I'm saying here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think we had a better team in '04, but we ran into a buzzsaw against Boston coming off that down, 3-0 to the Yankees. And once they got hot, there was no stopping them. But we squeaked in '06, and then we ended up coming out of it with a win. If Detroit could throw to the bases, we might have lost that series, but God willing, we pulled it out and got a nice championship and a ring and all that good stuff. But those years in St. Louis were just amazing. It's I probably had more fun in Oakland than I've ever had in my life as a baseball player. With the group of young kids that were there, but talent and things like that, and the way that we gelled as a team with St. Louis. I mean, that stuff. It doesn't happen every day, and we did it for 5 or 6 years in a row, and it was unreal. It was a run that, I think can be put up there with the Braves. I know it wasn't for 11 years like the Braves, but those years in the mid 2000s with the Cardinals was pretty special.
I loved it myself. We were talking a little bit about your free agency, and I'm just curious. When you talked about it, I didn't even think about asking you this, but what would you be feeling like, and what do you think some of these guys are? I mean, these are big names: Lance Lynn, Jake Arrieta, Yu Darvish. I mean, the names can go on and on and on. There's a giant free agent class that hasn't signed yet. What do you think these players are thinking, or what would you be thinking at this point if it's February, spring training starts in 2 weeks, and you don't have a contract, and it seems like there's something very odd going on, and how scared would you be?
Well, you got to realize, I don't think these guys are scared because they've got money in their pockets.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but in that same sentence, I'm sure there's some guys that are pretty pissed so that, they've waited their whole career to become free agents, and all of a sudden the owners are going to try to drive prices down. I'm not going to say it's collusion or anything like that, but I think that gentleman, they got Brandon Moss, I think he said it best. This is the monster that the players created in the last collective bargaining agreement. The owners are doing what they can do. Nobody wants to lose draft picks, for free agents and things like that. And this is what the players agreed to. And they should have known what was going to happen down the road, and it's happening now. And some guys are paying the price. I don't feel sorry for those big names that you just said, because they're probably all were making $15 million last year or so. I think it's those middle of the line guys that are, that have struggled not struggled, but as, major league average salaries go, they've been right around the average or below it. And then they become a free agent thinking they're going to get their big payday, and there's no paydays out there. So those guys are probably really struggling a little bit and frantically, panicking a little bit. But I think things are going to start happening here pretty soon. They pretty much have to. There's a lot of teams that need a lot of stuff, and there's guys out there. But I think once one guy signs, I think it'll be a domino effect, and it's going to happen quick. And I think it's going to happen before spring training, during the first month of the season. These guys are going to get signed. It's just going to be a whirlwind of signings really quick when it starts.
Couple more minutes, sir. I want to ask you about Generation K. We did start with that. I was just curious, just when you three, it was you, Wilson, and Pulsifer, three guys kind of on front of, I think, on an SI cover. What was the pressure like? This is 1994, 95. Everyone's talking about, well, these three guys are like the '86 Mets, Sid Fernandez, Doc Gooden. You got all these comparisons. What was the pressure like? And by the way, you did have a pretty good rookie season, 9-2, I think, in 14 games started, 2.81 ERA. You debut at Wrigley. I have all that information. What was the pressure like, though, just with all that hype. You're in New York, and just it's a ton of hype.
I did, and like I just said about like Wayno. I mean, at least I was too dumb to even know what was going on. I'm like, oh great, I'm on billboards in Times Square. I'm on the sports. So I was like, this is the way it's supposed to be, I guess. I didn't know anything different. I just went out there and had fun. I mean, I think I got caught up in it at times, thinking that this game's easy, and then all of a sudden I got humbled really quick. My second year, I had a little shoulder problem and had to drop my arm angle and couldn't throw my curveball for a strike, didn't have a changeup, and my command of my fastball, which has always been my bread and butter, had kind of gone away because I had to drop my arm angle because of a labrum tear. And I didn't feel the pressure. I don't know if the other guys did. It was we were just having fun. But then we all got hurt, and we all had Tommy John, and everybody had their own careers. Mine lasted the longest, but I mean, those are the years that was going on. I mean, our rookie years in New York was like a whirlwind. We had the world by the tail and just kind of trying to hang on. And, I pitched well and just kept the ride going. And then the next year, it's funny how that ride stops when you're not any good. And you learned out real quick that you better pitch well. I mean, they compared us to the 86 guys. Now they're comparing these guys in New York now to kind of us because they're kind of fizzled out a little bit. And New York's a scary place. New York can chew you up and spit you out, and it was very humbling. And it chewed me up and spit me out, and it spit me out to Oakland, which is probably the best thing that ever happened to me. If I could do it all over again, I guess I could say this: I would have loved to have been able to play my whole year in New York. That would have been awesome because I love New York and I love the people there. And you want to talk about getting booed? New York's a different animal about getting booed. And but I loved it, and I love everything about New York. But like I said, New York, St. Louis was my home, and being able to pitch here was very special to me. But Generation K, it was fun while it lasted. And, we still get comparisons to other young kids coming up, and I have reporters call me. And, if you could give these guys one piece of advice, what would it be? And it was always just stay humble. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. It's still baseball between the lines, and just stay healthy. That's the only thing I can tell people.
I think also one of the last things I want to ask you about before we kind of wrap up, you get to pitch in 2012, which is so crazy. You think about how long you did last. I mean, you really just, you'd hear, Izzy's trying to make a comeback, and wow, there he is with the Mets in 2011. Then there you are with the Angels in 2012. I mean, what did it mean to you to get back out there and get those numbers that you wanted to achieve, and then and just show that you still had a little left in the tank?
That's probably one of my favorite. That's probably one of the things I'm most proud of, I started off that last year in St. Louis really well. I mean, it was just, I think I started the year with, I needed 17 saves, I think, to get to 300 or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But we started off strong. It was just bing, bang, boom, 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 and everything was going good. And I was like, I'm on the verge of getting this. I'm going to get it at home and blah, blah, blah. It's going to be awesome. And then the elbow started hurting. And I got taken out of the closer role. I think Franklin got put in the role, and then it was pretty much I knew my time here was done. I would have loved to have gone and had the surgery and been done and came back and pitched for the Cardinals. But so I was sitting at D3, and I went home and I tried to bounce around a little bit, and I got back with I bounced around, went to the minor leagues with the Reds with Walt Jocketty was the GM there. He signed me. And I had a little procedure done, so I thought I was going to come back from that. And that didn't really work out. The elbow wasn't reacting well. And then went to Tampa, signed there. Actually got to the big leagues, pitched 9 games, and my elbow snapped on one pitch. The ball went halfway up the screen, and I just thought, that was it. I'm going to be 7 games short of 300, which was a goal of mine. I mean, granted, it's not the loftiest goal anymore with guys with 600, 500, 400 saves, but for me, I was going to be happy with it. And so then I had the old joking around. I was going to have the boat that said 7 shy on the back and all that kind of stuff. And I had another Tommy John and was sitting at home just messing around, and ended up started playing some softball. And I didn't rehab my elbow or anything. I was like, damn, my arm was feeling pretty good. I was throwing the ball from the outfield fence all the way to home plate, 300 feet. And so I called up J.P. Ricciardi, who was an assistant GM with Oakland way back when. said, hey, I think I got a little bit left in the tank. Can I come down to Florida for a tryout? And at that time, the Mets weren't doing real well, didn't have a lot of pitching. And he said, sure. So I went down and threw a little bullpen for him. And he said, you know what, we can sign you to a minor league contract if you're willing to do that and see where it goes. And I pitched in the spring training, pitched well. They had some guys that, were out of options and things like that. So he asked me if I would stay back in spring training for a few weeks to see what would happen. So stayed back and extended spring training, got some more arm strength, and they sent a guy down or released a guy, and they called me up 3 weeks into the season, and I pitched the rest of the year didn't go on the DL for anything. Francisco Rodriguez was the closer there, K-Rod. And we were going nowhere, and he got traded. And I remember Terry Collins was the manager, and Dan Warthen was the pitching coach, and they both come up to me. And it was like a week or two before the trading deadline, and everybody was talking about me getting traded because I was doing okay. And if somebody needed a veteran reliever to help stabilize a bullpen or something like that, just to help them, talk to them. And I told Sandy Alderson, I said, hey, I'm getting told for this. I said, I really don't want to be traded if I don't have to be. And he said he wouldn't trade me. And then the manager and the pitcher said, hey, we're going to trade K-Rod, so you're going to get your chance to get your 300 save here. And I ended up getting 7 more saves that year in New York. Got my 300 in San Diego. It was kind of fulfilling because I got my very first save in New York back in 1999. I got a 3-inning mop-up save. And I remember John Franco saying, hey, just think, 400 more and we'll be tied or something like that. And went on to start closing games. I got traded to after in 2011. So I finished the season in New York. And I thought I was done. And sitting at home, and my agent called and said, hey, the Angels are willing to sign you for, it wasn't no big amount of money. And I said, yeah, I'll give it a shot, because they had some young kids that were coming up and they wanted me to help them with stuff. And ended up pitching that whole year without going on the DL. I think I was the only guy in the bullpen to do it. And I had a funny story there because they were going to release me towards the end of the year, and I threw a big fit in Socha's office, slamming stuff, throwing stuff, telling them that it was bull crap that they were going to release me when I was the only one that stayed with them the whole year, and they were putting me in. They had a young kid, Ernesto Frieri, that would go in to close games, and if he got in any kind of trouble, they'd bring the old guy in to try to mop it up, and it always went somewhere or some way. It sometimes went bad. And, I told him that I was the mop-up guy for him, and they ended up keeping me on. So I was able to end my career striking out Michael Young for my last ever pitching at bat. And then I gave my hat and my glove to a young kid next to the dugout, and that was it. And I knew I wasn't going to come back after that. It was taking me too long to get ready to throw 20 pitches. So it was a heck of a time. Great time. Wouldn't change anything. And I got a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and now I'm just trying to, give it to the kids now.
I want to ask you about that, but real quick, you were with Albert that year too, and that was his first year away from the Cardinals.
That was Albert's first year, yeah.
What was that like for him? I mean, did you guys have any conversations? It sounded like he wasn't real happy.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. Every off day he always came back to St. Louis, and I called it Air Albert. He always asked me to come back with him, and we had a lot of conversations on those plane rides from L.A. to St. Louis, and you learn a lot about a person. I didn't know a lot of stuff about Albert, but in those conversations, I learned a lot. And unbelievable man, going through a lot out there. His age is catching up with him too, his body. But one of the absolute best hitter I've ever seen in person for how many years in St. Louis. St. Louis got the best years out of him. And, he's always going to be an icon in St. Louis. I'm sure one day I know he'll be in the Baseball Hall of Fame in St. Louis and in Cooperstown, and probably have a statue outside of Busch Stadium one day. And had a lot of fun, spending, listening to him and telling me how things went on. And he wasn't real happy with things, but true professional.
I was thinking too. I don't think we've replaced him as a first baseman since then either. It's been a struggle at first base for the Cardinals.
Yeah, it has. It's you have those iconic hitters, and you're never going to replace them. That's for sure. But the Cardinals are in this. I don't want to say transition or rebuild, but they're trying to find with the new analytical style of doing things. They're trying to find ways to get it done. they're in the hunt every year, and they got to figure out a way to get over that hump. Whether it be, they made some good trades. They're going to have. I think they still need to. The whole, like Tony used to say, he would build a team from the ninth inning guy backwards, and that's one thing we don't have yet is a lockdown ninth inning guy. And you know what? We'll see what Mo and Gersh have up their sleeve. There's going to be some signings, I do believe, coming up. When everything starts rolling again. And I think these guys are the smartest of the smartest in their front office with the Cardinals, and they'll figure it out. They're going to get us over the hump for sure.
I like to hear that. It's positivity. And
yes, it is.
So you're going to be. You got a new role, right? Congratulations, but kind of a newer role and kind of a bump, right? So you're going to be. Well, tell us about it. What are you doing?
Well, I'm not really doing anything that I haven't been doing for the last 3 years. I finally got a title, so I'm kind of official now. And in the eyes of the baseball world, I didn't have a title before. I was just bouncing around and helping pitchers here and there. And now I am considered a minor league pitching instructor. So now I work with all the minor league pitching, and we do as much mental stuff as we do mechanical stuff, and just trying to get these guys ready to go to the next level and not be caught off guard or let things get inside their head. Just try to prepare them for what's going to be ahead of them in the next levels.
It seems like it's a good crop, right? Hudson, Hicks. I mean, there's just a bunch of guys that it seems like they're counting on for the next 3 to 4 years to make things go on up here, right? I mean, the cupboard is not bare in the minor leagues, right?
No, I mean, especially with our arm. I think we're a little thin, position-wise. But I think pitching-wise, I mean, we have some unbelievable arms down there. We have a problem. Our problem is this: we have a lot of really, really good arms, a lot of good throwers, and that's my job and other people's job is to make them into pitchers, and that's what we're doing now.
Well, I think it's great. I'm glad you're still around, and this was fun. The thing that I always think about with you is I had to bug you a few times a year, maybe 3-4 times a year for the old job that I used to have, and I always thought you were so mean, and you were always mean to me. But I realized you were just.
If you do remember at that one fantasy camp, I did hit you in the line drive when I was hitting you ground balls at third base. That was for all the times where you used to bug me. So now we're even. So now I can be nice.
I told that story. I'm at third base, and it was like my first camp, and Izzy's the one hitting. So I got like the dentist over here at shortstop, and he's bouncing me. He's like, "Oh, Brad, here's one for you," and it was a line drive that actually like took a left turn towards me. Like I couldn't get out of the way, and it hurt, but I didn't show the pain. But I always
you did not. You did not rub it or anything. And I told other guys, like, I hit that ball, almost as hard as I could at this kid. And it did the whole tailing. You were trying to go one way, and it tailed right into you. It was like an ugly finder, and it caught you on the inside of the knee. And I felt bad. I did laugh at you, but I did feel kind of bad. But you were tough. You stayed in there. But we're even now for all the bugging, and now we're buddies.
Yeah, and I didn't know that's why that happened. So that's a great story. Because you used to be at spring training. Your locker was like in the hall, like the last locker before a hallway, and so I had to run back and forth. And you're like, "What are you doing? Are you going to wear out the carpet over there?" You just gave me so much. The other thing I remember though that you would have beers at like 10 a.m. and I was like, "Man, that's Major League Baseball right there." You'd bring in a 6-pack. We'd do an interview at 10 a.m. And you're like, "I got to get out of here. I got golf to do." I thought that was my favorite Izzy story is that you'd bring beer into the interview and say, "Let's go. I got stuff to do. It's 10 a.m."
Well, that was part of my training. You see, I had to ice my body from the inside out, and when you get out of spring training early on those days, it's time to go to the golf course and have a couple adult beverages and relax and kind of contemplate the year coming forward. And that's how I got my mind right.
Yeah, beer is very important in baseball. It's very important, and I think fantasy campers know it. But I hope you get in the Hall of Fame. I hope people realize that it's not easy closing out games and what you did for so many years. And just one last time, just give me your thoughts on being a Cardinal Hall of Famer. How much would that kind of seal the end of your story with the Cardinals?
Well, I hope it never seals the end of it. But then again, it would kind of put my career in perspective to some people, especially myself. And I've got a young daughter who's 8 years old who was never really around. She was around a little bit when I played later in my career, but maybe she always wonders why people come up and ask me for my autograph and things like that. So maybe it would make her realize that I'm a little cooler than what she thinks. it would be nice for that, especially my 15-year-old daughter who thinks I'm the meanest guy, the dictator, and meanest guy in the world. Maybe it would help me out a little bit in her eyes, but it would just be something to be able to be on the stage with those guys, the Red Coats. Fantasy camp now. I mean, now I'm buddies with Ozzie and Willie and Whitey and Bruce and Lou and everybody you can name, and Jimmy and Carp. But just to be on the same stage with them and be able to put that red coat on, yeah, it means the world to me. But it'll happen sooner or later. I mean, closers don't get the fame that everybody else does. You can see that in the Major League Cooperstown Hall of Fame. There's not many closers in there, and I don't think they get the respect that they're due. I mean, everybody thinks it's an easy job until you have to do it. I think it's the hardest thing to do in sports, that and a field goal kicker, is to get that last out or that last score to ice the game. But, we'll see how it goes. Hopefully the fans will do some voting. I know my family will be voting once a day for 3 months, so that's all I can ask for. And, if it happens and when it happens, hopefully I don't make an ass of myself with my speech, and we'll have a good time.
Well, I'm gonna tell people to vote for Izzy, and then I don't know who the second person is. Maybe Roland. I don't know. Maybe get the 06 team in there. But appreciate your time. This was fun, and this is the end of Baseball and Beyond for today. Presented by Masses Restaurants. You know them. 5 locations in St. Louis. Check them out at stlmasses.com. I thank Izzy, and hopefully you'll be checking out more as we continue here through the baseball season. Thanks for listening.